you very much, President, Commissioner, colleagues. The destruction of the European Union has been Putin's goal for years. And now with the national security strategy, Trump has joined the club. And their goals are clear. A weak and divided European continent, a polarized society, and far-right parties in power. And I'm looking at every group in this House except the far-right corner where the Putin's friend sits. And I'm looking at the European Commission. Putin, Trump, and Musk have declared war against you. They want you out. They want everybody out who fights for democracy. And they have a powerful weapon. And they're using it, social media. Elon Musk systematically downranks, that means censors, speech of pro-European political parties, violating our freedom of expression. In turn, he boosts pro-Putin parties that want to destroy the European Union. And the evidence from Germany, Poland, and UK is overwhelming, and we want finally the European Commission to investigate this. And X is not the only one. TikTok force feeds far-right content to people who do not choose that. Would we tolerate one party getting 80% of the TV space in a democracy? No, we would not. Then why do we accept that social media oligarchs impose this on our citizens in the online world? Why do we accept that the whole business model of social media is hate? Commissioner McGrath, you just said peace comes from respecting people, not from dividing them. So why do we accept the business model of an information online ecosystem that is built on dividing people, that is built on spreading hate? Colleagues, Commissioner, my constituents are deeply concerned about these attacks on our democracy. They are asking Europe to fight. But the person who could do that today is not even in the room. Executive Vice President Virkkunen has something more urgent to do than to listen to the concerns of citizens in Parliament, and I hope she's not meeting a big tech company. Tyranny requires our fear and our silence. Democracy requires courage and requires us to speak up. And I'm speaking up. I will not be silent, and I'm asking the European Commission to stand up for Europe. Vive l'Europe.
Thank you very much, dear colleague. Commissioner McGrath.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and can I thank MEP Gies for tabling this question on this important issue this morning. The Commission, honourable members, presented the European Democracy Shield, as you know, in mid-November. One of its core objectives is to better counter foreign information, manipulation and interference and disinformation campaigns, building on a strong EU regulatory and policy framework which notably relies on the Digital Services Act, the Regulation on Political Advertising, the AI Act and the European Media Freedom Act. The Digital Services Act plays a vital role as it obliges very large online platforms, or VLOPs, and very large online search engines, or VLOSs, to mitigate systemic risks to society and democracy stemming from their services. We are committed to make full use of all monitoring instruments to supervise the compliance of VLOPs and VLOSs with the DSA and to scrutinise the compliance of their recommender systems. Just 2 weeks ago, the Commission reached a new milestone by adopting its first non-compliance decision under the DSA and a third decision with binding commitments. With these decisions, we are making one thing exceedingly clear. Non-compliance with the DSA will have consequences. The Commission will continue to take forward its work on open cases, for instance on systemic risks to civic discourse, to ensure timely compliance while following due process. And along with our enforcement actions, we will continue to support Member State authorities in their role in the application of the DSA, as well as the broader ecosystem of actors. We will set up a common research support framework to provide access to data and advanced technology, pooling and strengthening the independent capacities of the research and academic community in providing independent analysis and defence on how FEME and disinformation campaigns spread online and impact the integrity of the information space. This framework will rely, among others, on the privileged access to data under the DSA and the political advertising regulation. In addition, the Commission is committed to the promotion of an independent and diverse media landscape, given their role in the information environment. The European Democracy Shield announced several actions, including the revision of the Audiovisual Media Services Directive to strengthen the prominence of media services of general interest and modernise advertising rules with a view to foster their sustainability. With the European Democracy Shield, the Commission is also reinforcing its support to Member States through its work on the European Cooperation Network on elections to safeguard the integrity of the electoral processes. This will cover aspects such as the responsible use of AI in electoral contexts. The Commission will also update the DSA Elections Toolkit in cooperation with the European Cooperation Network on Elections to take into account experience with recent elections and the need to cover particular phenomena, such as the exposure of EU citizens living abroad to FEME and disinformation campaigns during electoral processes. Furthermore, the Commission will set up the European Centre for Democratic Resilience, which will facilitate information sharing and support operational cooperation and capacity building to withstand evolving threats, in particular foreign information manipulation and interference and disinformation. I do look forward very much to hearing the views of the members of the House and to responding at the end of the debate. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Commissioner. On behalf of the PP Group, Mr. Kovacev, our questioner.
Уважаеми господин председател, уважаеми господин комисар, уважаеми колеги.
President, colleagues, free democratic societies are subject to constant attack, not only with the use of weapons, but through the algorithms of large online platforms. They are not neutral. They aim to keep your attention and to heighten your feeling of hate and to provide you with false manipulative content. This model has to do with negative feeling and is used purposefully by different propaganda networks, including the Russian propaganda machine, which organizes aimed campaigns against Europe through their so-called troll farms in order to ruin the trust in democratic process and institutions. A lot of surveys can show that these algorithms have played a significant influence over the election procedures in different countries, including Bulgaria, Moldova, etc. And they provide they provide extreme content to the public without having any clarity how this is based on their own interest. The large platforms need to find and deal with systemic risks for freedom and democracy. Freedom without any responsibility is not freedom, but vulnerability. This is the reason why we ask the Commission to start implementing in a consistent manner the DCA for large platforms, especially when they pose our processes and elections at risk. We are not speaking only about regulation. We are speaking about protecting our main democratic values, the building blocks of our European Union. Thank you.
La señora Mendes.
Ms. Mendes.
Sr. Presidente.
President, Commissioner, colleagues. I think if you look at recent elections in some member states and you look at national security strategies emerging from Trump's US right now, it's clear that we have direct threats to our democracies and electoral processes. There are algorithms present in the public debate now which are not at all neutral. They're actually favouring false and fake content. It's clickbait and it's intended for profit. And organised crime gangs and foreign agents behind this. We saw that in Romania, Czech Republic. We see it on our own platforms every day, the platforms we use. Faced with this, the Commission has no time to lose. The instruments are there, the DSA is there, and we need to ensure that we're not complacent. I'm thinking particularly of Articles 34 and 35. They have to be applied. We don't have a lack of legal instruments. Dear colleagues, what we have is a lack of a will to act clearly, with no subterfuge, come straight out and say, these are the responsibilities we have. This damage is being caused right now, and it is not only about the damage being caused right now. We're compromising the future of people who will not live under the same freedoms that we've enjoyed. And this is all done by people who are putting profit first, trying to create democratic chaos without any accountability. We need prevention in the EU. We need a strong, ambitious European democracy shield. We need to assess risks, protect elections, protect our digital space, and ensure that anti-democratic forces cannot get their hands on them. In the S&D, we welcome the Commission's goodwill here. We welcome the proposals on the democracy shield, but it has to be more ambitious. We need more action. And also, we need to be fearless. This is a corrosion of our democracy. Let's not be scared to say, look, they're attacking us. They're attacking the heart of our democracy. So let's go for it. Let's protect our democracies.
Muito obrigado. Señor Tanger Correa.
Mr. Tanger Correa.
Senhor Presidente.
President, Commissioner, I liked your speech on Bosnia. I didn't enjoy your speech on, and I listened to your speech on the Democracy Shield. We need to ensure that people are informed the way to deal with this problem. So we have to think about what's being lost and what's being gained. We defend democracy, freedom of expression. That's the politically correct discourse. So we're saying what we're supposed to say. And that's all about playing to fears. Now, my friends, it's not as simple as it may look. Because if we're going to build democracy, then democracy is the people in charge. We have to listen to what people want to say. And it's not enough to simply say that everything's a lie and it's fueling hatred. Obviously, there are risks. But risks don't disappear through dictatorial or autocratic means. It's the people who are sovereign and who can decide for themselves. Thank you.
Tanger Correa. Madam.
Thank you, Mr. Tanger Correa. Mr.
Panie Przewodniczący, Szanowny President, Commissioner, ladies and gentlemen, the problem about the European Democracy Shield is as follows. We are talking about goals that are very important, and the message is very important. We want to avoid lies, manipulation, and foreign interference, amongst other things, coming through the internet platforms, which might interfere with citizens' decisions in the electoral process. But at the same time, we are getting a bit suspicious of the fact that perhaps it is exactly the European Commission and the majority present in this House as well might lead to a situation whereby the principles of democracy would be violated. Focusing on, as the previous speaker said, focusing on the political correctness. Our duty is to avoid that. We do need, indeed, to protect ourselves against foreign interference, especially on platforms, on the internet. There's no debate around that, that's clear. But we must be vigilant. We must not allow any manipulation that would accompany those activities. This is a very important message for the entire European Union. We need to take care of the freedom of speech and respect for democratic debate in the European Union. Thank you.
You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Commissioner, dear colleagues. Elon Musk is doing a lot of research for self-driving cars. Just imagine the system will be the strongest, the most aggressive car will always have priority. It's impossible, it would be a lot of dead people. But what's happening right now? On X, it's exactly that. The most hateful, the worst postings, they have the most viewers because of the algorithm. So the algorithm he's organizing is against us. And the next thing, he's buying politicians in the United States, even judges. And that's what he wants to do in Europe as well. He wants to buy European politicians, and he already tries to influence European politics. And we're standing here and say, no, that's fine. No, it's not fine. We will not accept it. And if the right-wing people say there is censorship, yes, there is censorship right now, because the algorithm of Mr. Musk, they are censorship. People cannot see what they want. They have to see what Musk gives them, and that is hateful. And I tell you, as a former journalist, I know, and as an editor-in-chief, you have a lot of responsibility. And Musk has everything, but no responsibility. He doesn't take care. No, on the contrary, he wants hateful speech, and if you have that on a normal medium, you would go to jail. So that's the point. Mr. Musk must accept, he has to have responsibility, and that's the only way how we can do that. And really, Mr. Commissioner, I ask you, we need a very strong legislation, and we need a strong Commission, and he has to pay for that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brandstetter. Madam Gregorova.
Maybe a little bit. Sorry. Thank you. Dear colleagues, Commissioner, our entire internet economy is dominated by US and Chinese monopolistic platforms, and these platforms breach our privacy rules regularly, and the fines that we impose on them are irrelevant and embolden them to only ignore our rules further. TikTok, X and Meta have cornered the market of our digital attention. They are manipulating our elections for money and for their ideology. The US has explicitly named the destruction of the EU as its goal, and Chinese counterparts did not shy away from the same idea. Platforms do not comply under the DSA. We do not use our existing tools, and the Democracy Shield honestly gives us nothing. For this Commission, breaking our privacy and mass surveilling us is a yes. Stopping digital oligarchs and their addictive designs, a hard no. These online monopolists are all sitting in the US or China. The only way to protect our public space is to create our own European digital champions that follow our rules. That means we require that hardware cloud capacity to run our own companies, and that means we require to mobilize enough private investment paired with public money to scale our own companies for a market of 450 million people. A European Capital Markets Union, then, must be our answer. No more irrelevant fines and no more pretending that we do not have a problem. And please, Commission, if you are not part of the solution, you are part of the problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear colleague, Mr. Arvanidis.
Commissioner, President, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, it's not very usual here, but I will agree with many positions expressed, especially with my Renew colleague and my colleagues from the Socialists and the Greens. And I will move ahead in our discourse. Public debate is on the internet and on the big platforms, and nobody has the luxury to ignore that dialogue on big platforms does not take place in a neutral environment. The algorithmic systems defining the flow of information on our screens are not transparent, and has been proven that the big platforms prefer to promote some content in the most innocent form. This phenomenon creates anger, like the colleague said from Renew, and I agree with him. and it includes violence. It leads to polarization, and it sells more, in other words. We have the same thought. I'm an ex-journalist, and that's how I see things. But we don't stop there. We have been witnesses of systems of information and of intervention in the European policies through the social media. We've seen that happening on behalf of Russia in the Romanian elections. We've seen indirect interventions from people like Mr. Musk in the German elections, when he still belonged in the administration, the Trump administration. So it's proven that algorithms don't try to find a vague idea of what the user wants to see, but it promotes the interests of the owners, and it creates it promotes something very serious: hate, policy of hate and violence. The European Parliament had recognized systemic danger due to the lack of transparency of the algorithms for various democratic procedures. And we have to be activated, not only by preparing texts that do not have a legal influence, but we need a democracy shield. We have the tools. Why don't we interfere in order to be efficient in the protection of the rights of the European citizens on the big platforms? So since we have a legal framework, why don't we use it to the maximum to go against these threats? And of course, mentioned to a legally binding text in order to have transparency of the algorithm. That's not enough. Words are not enough. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Arvanitis. Madam Anderson, you have the floor.
Thank you. Some colleagues here suffer from a new condition, botophobia, the irrational fear of bots. But bots are simply the digital equivalent of a leaflet. During the Cold War, Europe was flooded with political pamphlets from every direction, yet no democratic government claimed that it must regulate these leaflets. This is actually what free speech means. Bots, however, are just a convenient boogeyman. In truth, you want to go after X, you want to go after Elon Musk, and after the dissenting voices that use his platform. You want X to follow your narrative and to downgrade whatever views you find undesirable. That is seizing editorial control, the digital equivalent of confiscating a newspaper printing press. But let's be honest, yes it is, but let's be honest, the voices you seek to silence are overwhelmingly on the right, where common sense is at home. AfD, Rassemblement National, Trump, Nigel Farage. It has nothing to do with foreign interference. It is about suppressing political opposition. Should you succeed, however, you will not silence dissent. You will actually multiply it, and rightly so. And the more you try to control the debate, the more citizens will despise you for it. Because your concept of our democracy has nothing to do with democracy. It is sanctimonious, and yes, it is indeed totalitarian. Leave the people alone, for God's sake. They haven't done anything to you. So just stop it and leave the people alone. That would be democracy.
Thank you very much, Madam Anderson. My friend, Mr. Zechetkowski. Merry Christmas, my friend.
Vážený pane předsedající,
Dear Chair, Commissioner, ladies and gentlemen, European democracy is under systematic pressure, not only from foreign actors, but also due to irresponsible business models of very large online platforms. Let me mention one other topic. I will not react to the nonsense from Madam Anderson, who believes that we're introducing some kind of a totalitarian regime, which is not what we're doing, but I want to stress one thing. I want fair competition. Why is it that large platforms use the content of democratic media to enrich themselves, but the profits don't stay in Europe? The profits flow through Ireland somewhere into the US. Yes, well, is this fair? Can we continue? We could, but then let's tell each other, let's agree we will not have any media in Europe. We will only have content that will be regulated by these very large platforms. Right now, we need to start thinking about changing that. If we let profits being generated using democratic content flow away somewhere into China, Russia, or United States, then Europe will have a serious problem. We will have a very serious problem in that we will have no media freedom. Thank you.
Dear colleague. Mr. Sullivan.
Thanks a lot. Nowadays, most of us get our news from social media. In Malta, around 80% do so. And while healthy democracies rely on quality journalism for objective information, this is not how our platforms are working. Big tech made a business out of polarization. Their algorithms give preference to interaction. It's what keeps attention and sells more advertisement for them. We know it, and the Digital Services Act was made to tackle it. High time to enforce our rules and stop the toxic recommender systems that are making us addictive and push extreme content on our citizens' timelines. Things have gotten worse with Elon Musk running X as a passion project, openly railing against the EU and supporting extreme right parties in election campaigns. This is no longer a neutral space for public debate. X has become a propaganda machine aimed at undermining our European community. A €120 million fine is a start, but not enough to make Musk respect our digital acquis. Bolder action is needed to force him to comply. And other platforms are not much better. On Facebook and Instagram, there are signs of shadow banning. If a news outlet or a politician publishes on the genocide in Gaza, their content is demoted and their reach diminished. It is how it should work in a democracy, that a company like Meta, a billionaire like Zuckerberg, decides what Europeans hear, what Europeans see online. Yesterday it was Gaza. This week it was the LGBTI pages that were removed. And tomorrow, what and who will be the next target of the algorithmic ban? At the same time, bot networks of fake profiles are given free space to influence our public debate, even in election periods. And while the problem grows, Meta's new policy since the start of the Trump administration is to drastically reduce content moderation, allowing more of bad stuff on their platforms while undermining our democracies in the process. When do we stop? The limit of what we can take has long been reached, and we expect the Commission to act as soon as possible. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, dear colleague. Mr. Bay.
Monsieur le Président.
President, the European Democracy Shield has been presented as Europe versus foreign interference and the spread of disinformation. But the European Democracy Shield is like an electric chair compared to a chair. These are procedures that are being imposed on people, to silence anyone who wishes to speak out. It's basically about doing away with freedom of speech. But when asked who this is for, who this is against, the Commission just puts in place this kind of digital dictatorship. DSA to police social media, but also a kind of crisis response as a justification for encouraging some platforms over others and forcing platforms to modify their algorithms. But who's in charge? Who's in charge of deciding whether something requires action or not? Brussels, no doubt. Fact checkers who are cherry-picked and directed. This is about muzzling the people, and we as Patriots for Europe oppose it.
My friend, Mr. Teresa.
Dear colleagues, there are only two ways of approaching truth. First, through revelation from top down. This requires faith and belongs to religion. Second, through reason from the bottom up. This requires doubt, debate, and confrontation of ideas. This is the task of science and the very foundation of a pluralistic democratic society. In the 17th century, Descartes expressed this shift with cogito ergo sum. By placing doubt and individual reason at the center of knowledge, he laid the philosophical foundation of modern Western democracy: open debate, free inquiry, and access to information. Today we hear repeated claims that online debate and elections are threatened by controversial speeches on large platforms, claims that are currently used to justify tighter control under the Digital Service Act. This is an undemocratic and profound un-European approach. Democracy is not endangered by too much debate, but by censorship. The European Commission must not become an inquisition policing thoughts. Its role is to keep EU an area of freedom, not to decide what citizens are allowed to think, hear, or say. Merry Christmas.
Thank you very much, dear colleague. Madam, I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it. You don't have a blue card.
I hear somebody commenting here.
No, I would like you to have a blue card, but you don't. Thank you, dear friend. Madam Nivoruhu, you have the floor.
Commissioner, online manipulation is reshaping our society. We can see this every day in our news and in our politics. Children are often the first targets. Ask any parent or teacher, or ask myself as a mother of two. This can move very quickly. Outrage, conspiracy, shame, and then radicalisation. Foreign interference has been sowing distrust for too long. AI now turbocharges this. This is why we need the European Democracy Shield that the Commissioner is heading. But a shield only works if there are strong politicians like us all here behind this shield. When online platforms amplify harm, we need to work faster. We need to identify fake information faster and to clearly flag this. We need to work together. Let's fight with me. Let's fight for children to protect European democracy. Thank you.
Dear colleague, Mr. Corman, you have the floor.
Colleagues, our democracy is dying before our eyes under the clicks and the posts from the far right, pushed by the platforms and the American and Chinese algorithms. We're facing an external threat that's being orchestrated by the imperialist forces of China and the US, but also internal forces, the far-right parties who are sitting right here in this House in the European Parliament. And this is really hollowing out our democracies, and their success depends on our downfall. So it's exploiting the algorithms to undermine our society, push for profit, and in this war, we are fighting foreign hostile interference, accomplices from within our ranks who are undermining our very institutions, whether it's Moscow, Beijing, or anywhere else. The intention is the same. It's hatred and pushing the narratives of our enemies. We have to take control of these algorithms that are designed to kill our democracies, protect press freedom, short-circuit this hatred that's being peddled. Interruption from the President.
Anderson, you have the floor.
Jos sinulle valehdellaan jatkuvasti.
Thank you. If you're constantly lied to, you end up not believing the lies, and you no longer believe in anything. I'm referring to the words of the philosopher Hannah Arendt, which I think are more relevant today than they have been for a long time. In Europe, mistrust is being sown in a way that really threatens our stability. Concerning this debate on the European Democracy Shield. You know, we've heard a lot about secret financing of political movements. We've heard about the bias of social media algorithms, and we've heard reference also to violent or far-right content. Now, these disinformation campaigns and election interferences have often led to consequences have led us to Russia, China, increasingly also the United States. And these countries seek to weaken the rule of law and democracy. That's why it's important to really understand the relationship between Elon Musk, Donald Trump, and Vladimir Putin, and the fact that there are so many far-right extremist movements which share a similar ideology and narrative. And Europe is collapsing, I'm afraid, because of liberal values or human rights. And these movements have a common project, and it transcends national borders. That's why it's important for us to strengthen democracy, strengthen the rule of law, also shore up our ability to regulate these large technology companies, to obtain information from them. We need to therefore exert influence also on funding the financing of all this. And furthermore, I would argue that we need to strengthen on education and welfare, of course. That is why I would say that the Commission's actions at present are not sufficient, and the Democracy Shield is not sufficient either. We need fact-checking, we need support for media, we need cooperation. All of that is important, I grant you, but it's not sufficient. We need to make sure that the European decision-makers, or indeed the Commission, that they don't bow to President Trump or to big tech. They shouldn't yield, and they shouldn't really restrict the private sphere of individuals through omnibus packages, or indeed when it comes to the question of public broadcasting. That too we need to nurture. So we can strengthen democracy, or we can alternatively undermine it, but what we need, I believe, is stronger action and stronger words here in the EU and also in the Member States.
You just hate freedom. You hate free and proud people all over Europe. And especially you hate people who love their nations, who love their countries, and who love their children. Because those people are your biggest enemies. Those people want to preserve their countries as they remember them from time they were children. They want to preserve their countries free, independent, safe, clean, and beautiful. They want their countries without hordes of illegal aliens killing and raping women and children in the streets, and they want their countries without daily terrorist attacks. And that's why you want to destroy freedom of speech on social media, because you want to destroy those people. You want to take their rights from them. You know very well that if those kind of people will have a right to freely share their information, they will never support your green scam. They will never support your migration policies because they see the results of them. They will never support your rainbow transgender stuff. That's why you decided to censor all of your opponents. That's why you decided to censor all of your critics and to spy hundreds of millions of Europeans through the chat control. And that's why you decided on a huge fine against Elon Musk's X platform, because he provided freedom of speech for the whole planet. He provided for us the real democracy which you hate the most. Because right now we see that not Trump, not Musk, not any foreign interference, but Ursula von der Leyen and her commission, you are the biggest enemies of freedom, you are the biggest enemies of free speech, and you are the biggest enemies of Europe, and we need to stop you at any cost possible.
You have, Mr. Masurek, you have a blue card. Do you accept it? No, he doesn't. Mr. Panayotou, you have the floor.
The EU wants to use censorship to protect our democracy. This is the essence behind the last proposal of our President, Ursula von der Leyen, to build a democracy shield with tools that go directly against freedom of speech. Von der Leyen was to reinforce sanctions against individuals based on their opinions if she considers they are misinforming. On top of this, our President wants to give more power to fact-checkers to moderate social media, who are nothing else than people with their own biases. I believe we should follow people like Pavel Durov and Elon Musk have done to allow more freedom of speech online. Things like community notes have helped to empower the citizens themselves to decide what's right and what's wrong, instead of biased fact-checkers. So please, von der Leyen, let Europeans express themselves freely, even if you don't like their opinion. Thank you so much. I love you all.
Mr. Panayotou, you have a blue card from Mr. Jouvet from S&D Group. Do you accept it?
Yes, of course.
Mr. Jouvet, you have the floor.
Merci, cher collègue.
Micro,
okay. Chers collègues,
Dear colleague, I took a look at your profile before coming in. Apparently you're what's known as an influencer. I listened to what you just said, defending platforms and specifically Elon Musk. I have a very simple question. In order to make that statement in this House, how many likes and shares have you gained on those platforms? A little bit of transparency, perhaps, shed some light in the murky corners of your interaction with these platforms.
I'm not sure if I understood your question. You said how many likes and how many shares I got from these platforms. So we upload videos to all the platforms, and so far we got billions of views talking about the most boring thing, the European Union. So in all the platforms. So I don't understand really your question. But I think X and Telegram took some good steps closer to freedom of speech. And before Elon Musk acquired X, it was, I think, other platforms got inspired, like Meta, to use these community notes and all this stuff. So I think it was a step to the right direction. Still, we need to improve fact-checkers. It's not the end of the story. Thank you so much. I love you all.
Mr. Panayotou. Señor Zoido.
Mr. Zoido, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, presidente.
Thank you very much, President González Pons. Commissioner, the European Commission is proposing that public media should be at the forefront of combating disinformation on European territory. This is a good intention, but I'm not sure it'll work, because it is these media themselves that are engaging in disinformation. You'll be familiar with the political situation in Spain right now. There's a government that is now overwhelmed by scandals and corruption, particularly bad over the last few days. Last Tuesday, for instance, we had one after another case for sexual harassment in the Socialist Party. What was on Spanish TV? Opus Dei and babies stolen by the church. Then the Guardia Civil was going in to check on millions of euros of procurement contracts in ministries. What was the Spanish TV talking about? The Christmas lottery. This week we're now seeing some images that would link the government of Spain to Maduro's regime and former Prime Minister Zapatero in a corruption scandal. But what's on public TV? Chocolate nougat is getting too expensive. Might sound like a joke, but that is the sad reality that we are currently living through in Spain. Mr. Sanchez has achieved now a propaganda machine from Spanish TV. Spanish TV has great professionals in it. There are great people in there. They just need the government to stop interfering in their work so that they can do their jobs properly as public servants, which is what we'd all like them to do. Thank you very much.
Vice President Saldemus, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, and colleagues, I will speak in Danish, but I will comment on what has been said so far. Først og fremmest vil jeg gerne sige tusind tak til.
First of all, allow me to warmly thank Alexandra Geze for taking this initiative and allowing us to have this debate today. One of the biggest lies being spread today is this idea that the DSA is a tool for censorship. That is quite simply wrong. And you say that it's an attempt at censorship. That is a lie that's being spread, and it's not on. When something is illegal, then illegal content needs to be removed. If you have foreign interference or something undermining democracy, you have to have actions, and it's up to the platforms to do that job. So we cannot spread this lie. Nobody is going to be silenced. Today, social medias have become part of our democratic fabric, and that's why we need just and fair and transparent methods. So I think it's not right to say that these platforms are fair or transparent. Any kind of there is also foreign interference that happens in other areas as well, and in America, and people are saying that because we want to apply our European law in Europe, that they want to sanction European companies. Surely that is also an attempt to influence our democratic decision-making, and that's not something we can accept. So we have to have a fair application of the DSA and build a strong, resilient democracy in Europe so that we can have a fair and balanced debate. All voices should be heard, but we need to be able to do that fairly. It's not possible in social media right now, which is why we have to have this law implemented properly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lush.
This Christmas, Ursula von der Leyen got herself a brand new toolbox for censorship and manipulation. Thierry Breton, the commissioner who tried to censor Elon Musk, is out. But we have two new censorship commissars, Michael McGrath and Henna Virkkunen. They use the threat of foreign interference as pretext. The new toolbox is called Democracy Shield because it shields the EU against democracy, against you, dear European citizens. Instead of burning books, they're building a vast network of political NGOs who will be the European overlords of truth. This is also why the European Commission refuses to release the NGO grants worth 17 billion euros of recent years. The US shut down USAID for this very reason. The Obama and Biden administrations, hand in hand with Soros, the Rockefeller Foundation, the Ford Foundation, the Oak Foundation, and using NED and the German Marshall Fund and Transparency International and the Zinc Network and Dexis and many others have established a network so corrupt it was impossible to reform or trace the funding. Now this network will rely on EU funding to keep
if you want to make
afloat.
the votes on time,
if you want to defend democracy,
to your time.
make foreign funding of NGOs.
Thank you very much. Will you accept the blue card from Garcia Herminda van der Wallen?
From who? Oh, sure, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, colleague Laszlo. I would like to speak about Hungary. In Hungary, 68% of men think it's acceptable to control the financial situation of women. That is 22% higher than the European average. And among young boys especially, 72% think that it is the task of men to earn money. That is 30% higher than the European average. I think that we should be shielding Hungarian women from this development. And I was wondering if you agree with me that this is something concerning, that you should not want this for your country, and that social media platforms do have something to do with this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You have obviously no information whatsoever about what we have done in the last 15 years. We, Fidesz and KDNP, Christian Democrats, we have put forward so many tax breaks to women and incentivized working women so much. They have increased, if you look at women employment rates, they have increased drastically since we're in government. That's the truth. That makes them more independent, doesn't they? Isn't that your argumentation? Well, this is exactly what we did. And we're cutting also their,
Thank you.
the personal income tax for mothers of 4, 3, and soon 2 children in Hungary.
Thank you. I would love to have the longer debate, but this is not really possible. You want to question back, reply back?
Thank you, Chair. That was not my argumentation, because I appreciate every single thing that is done for women to become more independent. I am talking about all those men in Hungary who, influenced by social media platforms which are totally out of control, think now that women should be under their direct financial control. That's what I'm talking about. You're not responding to that.
Because it's insane. I mean, there's no any kind of evidence suggesting that it's social media and the men responsible in Hungary for that women should stay home. That's insane. As I said, if you look at the policy we have done, it's exactly the opposite what we have done. So I would suggest to you, instead of turning men against women and women against men, we believe in a family policy approach where women and men form a family together and complement each other. That's what I suggest to you, and that's what I suggest to all Hungarian citizens.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
A teraz by som poprosil kolegu Mantovaniho.
Mr. Mantovani, yes.
Presidente, Commissario.
President, Commissioner, colleagues. There's nothing more dangerous than someone who believes that there's only one truth. Niscaretti, Nobel Literature Prize winner, said this. Of course, we need to ensure that we have open and accessible social media which are reliable, but we've seen public funding from the Commission which has shaped the debate on Green Deal, which has ruined our industry. What about NGOs and media promoting the Green Deal or the specific interests of certain political groups getting public EU money? That was political disinformation paid for by citizens. So if you talk about transparency on algorithms, you have to do it across the board. You can't only do it when it's things that you don't like. That doesn't help democracy. That's simply imposing your will through other means. Transparency should be universal.
Ďakujem a teraz poprosím kolegu Tomaca.
Thank you. Mr. Tomac.
Thank you, President, Commissioner, colleagues. A few years ago, we discussed threats. Today, we are discussing actual foreign interference, large-scale disinformation used against us. In Romania, the manipulation of algorithms and bots that manipulate networks is something which is proven. In the Republic of Moldova, Russia's hybrid pressure and the disinformation campaigns were meant to deviate Moldova from its democracy path and European course. This doesn't stop at the border, which is why I believe that this European Democracy Shield is a necessary step. But if we want it to be credible, we need to enforce it properly. So it is time now to take the next step and to create a position of commissioner in the future, a commissioner to fight against disinformation, because we need much stronger tools to fight disinformation and foreign interference.
Excuse me? No, sorry. OK, ako ďalšiu poprosím kolegyňu Ryba.
Gracias, President.
Ms. Ryba Iżenie. Thank you, President, Commissioner. Imagine a young person searching for political information on TikTok. 1 in 4 videos suggested by the platform leads them to a far-right party. Now imagine a teenager on another app. In just 5 days, the recommendations quadruple the misogynistic content they receive. These are not one-off cases. Many studies confirm this pattern. Algorithms amplify polarizing and hateful content. This is neither neutral nor accidental. By rewarding disinformation and extremism, platforms distort the digital public space. This distortion threatens democracy and reinforces the anti-democratic and anti-European agenda of an authoritarian right aligned with those who want to weaken Europe. It is time to act. European democracy cannot be in the hands of 3 tech bros or people taking decisions in Silicon Valley. Europe should be decided upon in Europe.
Ďakujem a teraz poprosím kolegu Jongena.
Thank you very much. Mr. Jungen.
Sagen wir es offen.
Let's say it openly. The European Democracy Shield doesn't protect democracy, it protects those in power from the people. It's a control instrument, and I don't think George Orwell could have found a better title for this instrument. You want to protect people from foreign interference, and in truth, it's citizens being protected against access to information so that they're being fed the official narrative coming from the EU. On Twitter, before it was taken over, we saw that it was a censorship and propaganda tool. So that's why we see this war on Musk now, because he's freed up the platform and he's being tackled through all these fines. And it's innocent citizens who are being woken up at the crack of dawn by the police because they said something that went against the official line. And we know what Socialists and Greens are all about. It's about keeping the conservative and right-wing politicians away from power. So we're seeing cancelled elections, Georgescu being expelled due to a supposed interference from Russia. And this is a pattern that's being replicated now. You want that to become the status quo. Let's be honest, you are not Democrats, you're anti-democratic.
Thank you, Chairman. On Monday, the Council imposed sanctions on Jack Bolt, a former Swiss colonel, for his opinion on Russian war. I'm not here to defend Mr. Bolt or his opinions, but the fundamentals of criminal law. Mr. Bolt was punished by asset freeze and travel ban. Contrary to Article 7 of the European Convention on Human Rights, he was punished without committing any crime. Contrary to Article 6, there was no presumption of innocence, no hearing, no right to attorney, and no impartial court. Do you want to live in a country where citizens are punished for speech in absentia by a bunch of bureaucrats? Did somebody abolish the Convention and the EU Charter on Fundamental Rights and we didn't notice? Whom we are going to punish next? Professor Merzheimer, Jeff Sachs, any critic of Kallas and von der Leyen? Donald Trump and J.D. Vance say EU is no longer a democracy. Looking at this case, I'm afraid they are right. Thank you.
A teraz poprosím kolegyňu Glavak. Nech sa páči.
Thank you, Ms. Glavak.
Thank you very much. Thank you, President. Dear colleagues, Commissioner, this is a question that we're asking not because we don't have rules, but because we do have rules, but unfortunately there are so many systemic risks now out there. You know, these VLOPs, they're not just the ones that convey content, they also shape the content. And disinformation, you know, clickbait, trying to get as much engagement, trying to make as much profit as you possibly can. And of course, there's a question of electoral interference. And I don't know, our European citizens don't really believe in democracy anymore. It is a difficult situation. You know, we've seen how Russian propaganda operates. We've seen various incidents. We've seen, you know, certain content being promoted, other content being played down. It's no coincidence. Now, if you look at Article 34 of the DSA, you'll find that there is an obligation imposed upon online platforms. They have to check these things, and they have to, if the content is not right, they have to take it down. And there's also Article 36, I believe. Why don't we use these instruments? So, dear colleagues, this doesn't have anything to do with freedom of expression or any other kind of freedom. Freedom of expression, freedom of opinion, doesn't mean to say that the owners of these large online platforms can manipulate things using their visibility as a tool. That's why we want to send them a message today. We want to make sure that these platforms are not left without any kind of responsibility for their actions.
Oh, then my colleague was wrong. I'm very sorry. Oh, apparently you had 1.5 minutes on the timer already.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Sorry
It's
for
democracy. So you understand me very well. Thank you very much.
Thank you for understanding. Merry Christmas. A ako ďalšieho poprosím kolegu Živě.
Thank you. Mr. Jouvin. They're American billionaires and oligarchs who are trying to attack our model here in this hemicycle of far right, then coming here and saying very earnestly that they're trying to defend democracy. But these are manipulated algorithms and ongoing lies. AI on X and TikTok are all aligning behind one aim: to bring in a reactionary international, to bring down our societies, manipulate information, and create an ongoing situation in which they can continually impose this false information on us. There are millions of views of content which has been manufactured and created exclusively by these platforms in order to harm our democracies. And then people come here and say, I'm a patriot, when actually what they want to do is destroy our model and enfeeble our democracy.
Thank you. The next speaker, Madame Joron.
We wait.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Thank you, President, colleagues, and followers of BFM TV and the Democracy Shield. So we're seeing farmers being gassed by helicopters, and no, they're not angry. It's some anonymous source that says that it's far-right conservatives from the US who are spreading their message on X and platforms and telling us that we're all idiots, and it's absurd. The BFM TV that's being accused of the plotting, well, it's just sheer nonsense. Good thing that we've got the fact-checkers to do their jobs. It's all rubber-stamped by Brussels, and you've got protesters lining the streets, but no, it's London and Tehran who are driving the tractors our way. It's ridiculous.
Thank you very much, and I call Mr. Piperia.
Scutul democratic.
The European Democracy Shield is a bad joke, made on the expense of the European citizens. The European Commission does not try to defend the citizens from the so-called disinformation, but it tries to defend itself from opinions that disturb it. Billions of euros are thrown away to protect these instruments, but real problems are being ignored. In this fever that goes against democracy, in the so-called fight against disinformation, everybody forgets the fact that leprosy entered the European Union again. There are two new cases of leprosy in Cluj in Romania, two Asian people working as masseurs. So such a disease that has been eradicated for decades in Europe penetrates our territory through foreigners. We need to protect our citizens from real threat to their health. This is the real shield that we need right now.
Thank you very much. I now call Mrs. Jean-Courtin. Thank you very much, President, Commissioner, colleagues. Our democracies are not being hit by missiles, but by algorithms. They're political tools, weapons. They can manipulate millions of citizens, and they can actually tip election results one way or another in a matter of hours. Online attacks are the new weapons of mass destruction 2.0 in Europe. Now, the platforms tell us they're neutral. That is not right. That is not correct. They incite fear, anger, and that is ideal fuel for disinformation. In 2022, the EU decided to draw a red line. DSA, if there's something online that is illegal, it is illegal, full stop. But of course, a shield will not protect everyone if we don't apply our own laws. If we don't apply our own laws, we leave the scope open for manipulation. Our so-called American friends ask us to do something here in the EU. But, you know, if Trump and Musk are furious, it's because we are doing our job. But again, it's not enough. The Commission should go further, should really penalise these platforms when they trample all over our laws. This is harmful to our citizens, to our democracies. It's time for us to act now. Thank you. Thank you. I call the next speaker, Andriotis.
Συνάδελφοι, my colleagues, we agree that truth leads to freedom, and freedom has as a precondition truth. During our days, technology gives us enormous possibility to access any information. However, lie and misinformation are a problem today. They threaten a democratic institution and influence things that happen in the world. The average user, with perfection of AI, is difficult to find what is true and what is not true. The platforms use algorithms that promote contents that creates reactions, even if that's false. The most dangerous of all is that states or groups of interest use misinformation as a means of manipulation, political manipulation. They influence the election and they polarize the public opinion. They use controlling groups, they control the events, and they try to impose their truth, and they define what is true and what is not true. So we should take into account that we are at a crossroads in history. We will either serve truth that makes us free citizens, or voluntarily we will prefer to be bound by lies, and we lose the biggest benefit of truth.
Thank you very much. And I call the next speaker, Mr. López Istúriz White.
La democracia europea no está.
European democracies are not being attacked by missiles or tanks, but it's one click at a time, one with algorithms. Today, we are being ruled by platforms where we can't control the content, and the algorithms are polarizing opinion, amplifying disinformation, and opening the door to foreign interference. We know very well in Spain what the consequences can be with regard to young people and Russian interference in the attempted coups by separatists in Catalonia, which has been investigated only very recently. This is mass manipulation. Defending freedom isn't about accepting algorithms. It's we need. Our democracy is not some experiment. Our elections are not just data sets, and our elections are not experimental sites. So if these platforms are going to be as powerful as they are, they must be held to account, because when democracy stands to lose.
Thank you. The next speaker, Mr. Cepeda. Thank you very much. Thank you, President, Commissioner. Yesterday afternoon, we were talking about a shared intelligence system here in Europe in order to guarantee and to avoid any attacks. You know, we wanted a kind of cyber defense shield to prevent us from having foreign interference. In every electoral process in Europe, we see every time these opaque algorithms. My colleague Istúriz Weiss talked about this just a moment ago, and it's true that they do have a direct impact on the opinions of our fellow citizens. This has been researched, studied by academics. I think it's something like 40% of the information on the internet is actually being steered by algorithms. So in this day and age, you know, we need human intervention. So obviously we need to pull up our sleeves, get down to this work. If we don't control social networks, if we don't control these algorithms, then I'm afraid we're headed towards the deconstruction of Europe. That is the direction of travel, clearly, and our democracies will really suffer. That is why we count on the Commission to help us out. Thank you very much. The next speaker, Mr. Kroes.
Ja, dank voorzitter. De Europese...
Thank you, President. The EU always wants to act on the pretext of defending democracy, but it was always about more and more censorship. There are all these communists who want more and more rules, more and more taxes, more mass migration, unaffordable energy, permanent warmongering, and those who do not listen to Brussels, like Hungary or Belgium, have to be punished. The people of Europe, though, are voting against a corrupt system of the globalist elite, and people don't want to be spied on, controlled, and see their media censored. What they're doing is fines, chat controls, subsidising their own media, their own intelligence services. These are Stasi practices. We're seeing the last convulsions of a communist utopia that is losing its grip on power. But as with every communist regime that has tried to conquer Europe, this attempt will also fail. So to the European Commission, I say that your days are numbered. The wall always falls, and this wall stands in Brussels.
Will you accept the blue card from Garcia Herminda van der Valle? No, probably not. Sorry. Oh, no. So you will. Perfect.
Thank you, Chair. Dank, meneer Kruijs, voor de compliment aan deze.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kruijs, for complimenting our political forces. We're very proud to be able to defend democracy, and I'd like to ask a similar question to what I asked Mr. Laszlo from Hungary. Studies have shown that 68% of men in the Netherlands think it is okay for them to control the financial situation of women, and they find it okay for women to earn less than men. Do you think that is okay? Is it acceptable? Or do you agree with me in thinking that social media have spun out of control?
Wat u vindt, ik heb overigens niets tegen.
I do not agree with you. I have nothing against young men. We know that in the 1980s, Europe still accounted for 26% of the global economy, and that has dropped rapidly. So rather than throwing those kind of figures at me, I think we should be talking about Europe's economic performance rather than this claim that people have been have been influenced by social media. So I think there are other figures that are more relevant.
Thank you. I call the next speaker, Mr. Solier.
Señor Presidente, Comisario.
President, Commissioner, today we're talking about the European democracy field. That sounds very good, as if democracy were a castle that needed to be protected. And yes, of course, there is interference and there's disinformation, and the algorithms of the big platforms can amplify this kind of rubbish. But are we going to protect Europeans, or are we protecting governments against Europeans? Because when you have a shield, you really invite a debate around what is true, what is false, and what's disinformation. Now, we are calling for clear and serious rules to stop interference from outside and have rules and evidence-based measures. So no attacks on freedom of information. Tocqueville said that we shouldn't be tyrannizing or infantilizing the people. So we're not really sure what's behind this proposal from the Commission. Without freedom, we will lose. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I now call the next speaker, Mrs. Cifrova Osrihonova.
Hours on online platforms with children, almost twice as much. These hours are spent inside systems that decide what information you see, in what order, and with what emotional charge. You are shown content designed to shock, scare, and keep you hooked. And these systems neglect our well-being, our democracy, our society, and they do so by design. So what do? Do we fall into the false debate about free speech? Nope. Because the EU Democracy Shield is about protecting us from censorship, from the censorship of algorithms that push extremism, that push anti-women ideas, as we've heard here from my colleague Van der Valle. These are platforms that are not designed to keep us safe and to protect our democracy. But friends, these are our elections. This is our Europe. These are our rules, and we have to abide by them. And our future will be also judged by the strength of our Commission. So please, do make us proud. Thank you.
Ďakujem. A teraz...
Thank you very much. Next speaker, Mr. Vavrikiewicz.
Chair, Commissioner, colleagues, the European Union is undoubtedly under attack. European democracy is challenged by the architecture of online platforms. They play a crucial role in determining what citizens see, share, and ultimately what they believe in. The platforms promote content that is polarizing, misleading, and emotionally charged, while fact-based journalism and constructive political discourse are structurally disadvantaged. And who benefits most from that? Of course, Russia, whose main goal is to destroy our European unity, values, and democratic system. A destabilized, weak, and manipulated Europe is Russia's strategy. The platforms has learned how to exploit algorithms to spread its propaganda using coordinated networks, bots, and targeted narratives to manipulate visibility and shape political debate. However, the European Union is not powerless against this threat. The European Democracy Shield must not only be a shield, but also a sword that allows us to protect ourselves from these acts of hybrid warfare. Now, the Commission needs to use the available tools to ensure that Europe's digital public space is resistant against Russian propaganda. Thank you.
Ďakujem. A teraz
Thank you. Next speaker, Mr. Dinko.
Domnule comisar.
Commissioner, we see risks daily. Our elections are influenced from the outside. There are coordinated messages, automatic networks, algorithms who promote fear and decide what reaches citizens. We make technical decisions, but they have political effects. In border areas such as Romania, we see these effects because tensions are being exploited, and we see that in some communities that have less access to information, this is being felt. We need concrete, serious measures. We need to screen online platforms before the elections. The authorities and researchers need quick access to data. We need to strictly apply the Digital Services Act and to apply sanctions immediately when we see that it is violated. We need to prevent coordinated campaigns to respond not in weeks but in hours. Measures for targeting online advertising. We can defend democracy, and we can do so by starting here.
Blue card from Mr. Bistron. Over there, on the very extreme right. Wait, your mic is not yet on. Please press the button.
Jetzt?
Ja.
Lieber Kollege, vielen Dank, dass Sie die Frage zulassen.
Thank you very much for allowing me to put a question to you. I grew up in communism just like yourself, so we both experienced this. Communists censored information coming from the free West, but at the same time, the West did not actually censor any information from the East. They weren't afraid. The West was a democracy, and they knew, that they were actually talking about the truth. But now, you're here in the EU, you're talking about Russia today, the EU, how is it behaving? It's behaving a bit like the communists back in the day. Doesn't that give you pause for thought?
Sie bekommen Geld.
You're getting money from whom?
Focus on the debate. Yeah. Can you answer the question, please?
Well, yes. We are all free to have an opinion. At this time, democracy enables us and allows us to believe anything we want, but facts show that what we try to do with this European Democracy Shield is very necessary. Of course, you are free to comment and to argue anything you want. Thank you.
Ďakujem. A ako ďalej?
Thank you very much. I call the next speaker Mr. Girauta Vidal. Thank you very much, President. I'm wondering, this moral superiority, where do you get it from? what exactly do you think that you have that's better than us? You know, what's your virtue? What's your added value? What is it that makes you say the extreme right? You know, that's, you know, what I'm saying here is we're seeing hatred. It's, I'm sorry, but what we need to put up with here, you know, we want to preserve freedom of expression in a democratic system. You know, the shield, or what you call a shield, is basically slamming doors. And it would put an end to a principle without which we would not have liberty and democracy. Without freedom of expression, you absolutely cannot claim to be living in a democratic system. Look at the facts. Disinformation, you know. What about the mainstream media? Look at what their practices are in our countries. You know, controlling newspapers is a lot easier than controlling networks, right? Thank you.
Blue card from Mr. Cepeda.
¿De quién?
Your colleague Cepeda.
Por supuesto.
Sí, ¿qué tal?
I have a direct question for you. You're talking about freedom of speech. How can you have freedom of speech if you don't protect your principles and values in a democracy? You're a journalist like myself, so you'll be aware that there are certain ethical principles that underpin the use of information, aren't there? If you have mass disinformation being presented, whether it be through high-tech or analog means, is that permissible in a democracy, such as is occurring in some democratic communities in Spain, such as Madrid?
Well, I know exactly what it means to be the victim of mass disinformation. I'm a Catalan, you know. Look at what happened in terms of the public media, the disinformation, and by the way, our TVE is pretty much doing the same thing with all the Spaniards right now. Anyway, censorship. What was censorship exactly? It was basically when you did not complain about Twitter, when you prevented people from talking about real facts, for instance, about Mr. Biden's son. We're not allowed to talk about that. It's taboo. That is what it is. Now, Elon Musk was much criticized yesterday, but I think basically what we're witnessing is freedom.
I have to be strict with the time because, colleagues, you don't want to run into the vote time, so nor do I. And that's why I'm also taking only one blue card per speaker, and now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Peltier.
Quand l'Union européenne...
The EU opens a debate on democracy. It's like the Socialist Party organising a conference on cutting tax. The Louvre Security Agency, or a vegan barbecue recipe on Arte, or an Islamist talking about love. We are hearing Emmanuel Macron and Greta Thunberg speaking out, but nobody believes them anymore. We are now adopting measures of desperation. That's what we're seeing. Jihadists killing our children, and we're seeing a huge collapse, a moral collapse. Civilization came from Athens, but it's being destroyed in Brussels. Your thought police, we are the gendarmes of liberty. And in France, where we had an illumination, when we had the country of de Gaulle, Cyrano de Bergerac, we say no thanks.
The blue card from Mr. Grazulis. No, sorry. Now I would like to give the floor to colleague Joveva. Next Apache.
Whenever the people are well informed, they can be trusted with their own government, was once said in a country that now seems to prove the opposite. Europe is squeezed from the revisionist East by trying to subvert democracy from within, while across the Atlantic we hear that our laws are anti-democratic and anti-freedom. Ironically, the one trying to lecture us on genuine democracy is the one spreading lies, suing free press, and playing with democratic institutions like a schoolyard bully, all while pressuring us to abandon the very tools that keep our elections fair and our press independent. European Democracy Shield is an admirable and necessary initiative in a world hostile to Europe by alleged friends and foes alike. But Europe already has laws like the DSA and ENFA. All the Commission needs to do is to have guts to enforce them. Europe's strength is in the rule of law and the firm enforcement of the democratic standards it has built. Only then will we choose the future we want, not the one others draw for us. Thank you.
Ďakujem pekne a teraz poprosím kolegyňu.
Thank you very much. Ms. Wisla-Niva is the next speaker.
Ce débat est celui de la...
This debate around is about democracy itself. Companies are pursuing profit. The greater the public engagement, the more profit is generated, and the algorithms are designed that way. The more polarizing and violent the content, the more it pushes hatred, the more you generate clicks and sharing. And that spreads much more quickly than genuine information. So authoritarian actors from abroad, but also within Europe, are seeking to undermine and destroy democracy. And they're using these platforms as a battlefield. And that's where we are vulnerable, because they're using those rules against us. They're using our freed space to undermine the rules. And so we have to develop our resilience against these malicious and manipulative strategies. We must ban what should be banned. We're facing organized and systemic aggression that seeks to undermine freedom and democracy. Independent journalism needs support, and we must draw a line where online tools are being used to stifle expression. So let us defend freedom. Thank you.
Poprosím kolegyňu Insie.
Ms. Inge is the next speaker.
It is unacceptable that a handful of powerful online platforms shape what our citizens see, while their algorithms amplify lies, fuel polarization, and distort public debate. The Digital Service Act gives us, yes, the tools to hold them accountable, but without enforcement, it is meaningless. It is also crazy that there are people in here from the far right who are defending these platforms and their super rich friends instead of defending our democracies. Member states have even exposed coordinated disinformation campaigns designed to interfere in EU elections and undermine trust. The European Democracy Shield must protect our people, our democracies, and our elections against threats coming from the platforms Meta, TikTok, and X, and other spaces. With power should come accountability and responsibility. And this is something that these platforms refuse to understand and more even accept. We need rapid crisis response tools, real oversight of platforms, algorithms, and cooperation with fact checkers and civil society. Democracy will not defend itself.
Thank you
we
very
must
much.
defend it.
Thank you. A teraz poprosím kolegyňu Andrue.
Ms. Andrew.
Pratique n'est ni un bouclier.
The Democracy Shield is neither a shield nor democratic. It's a tool for the EU to engage in mass surveillance. It's not external threats, but freedom of opinion. Funded NGOs, subverting democratic processes, opaque algorithms without any neutral and objective checks. It's not about a public discussion, but discrediting opponents and dissidents and bringing in ideology into everything. What Brussels is scared of is opinions which are not under their control. And freedom of expression has to be submitted to the powers that be. They want to decide what Europeans can hear, say, or think. And we will battle to the end to defend these values which are so dear to our civilization.
Mr. Bartulica.
Kolege, 1990. godine je hrvatski narod odlučno odbacio komunističku diktaturu.
For many years, the Croats were able to overthrow a dictatorship, communist dictatorship, but we look at what's happening now in the European Union. There are new challenges for democracy. There's an attempt to control public space, to limit freedom of speech and expression. There is a lot of pressure being piled on the platform X, but we see that when the official political narrative is not being followed, then that is being sanctioned. And we know of a teacher who is behind bars because he didn't want to self-censor himself and wanted to continue speaking the truth. Some people are being punished because they want to quote the Bible. That's not the sort of censorship we want to see, and it runs against our fundamental freedoms.
No? Thank you. A teraz poprosím kolegu Görensa, s'il vous plaît.
Mr. Goerens.
Monsieur le Président,
President, Silicon Valley is now apparently concerned about the negative impacts of social media on their own children. So they care about their own children, but not other people's children. So why shouldn't the EU want to protect young people? Parents who are not tech bro billionaires. We need to dismantle lies, this tsunami of disinformation, counter-truths and interference in European elections and manipulation of the opinion of European citizens. The highest political levels in the US are defending this on the grounds of freedom of speech. They're threatening EU legislators with severe consequences, and this is a fox in a hen coop or a predator in the jungle. What I call on the European Commission to do is adopt the measures which are in the existing legislation. Do not give in to these threats or blackmail.
Mr. Smith.
Collega's.
Thank you very much, President, Commissioner, colleagues. My political party supports protection of our democracy against genuine foreign interference, cyber attacks, election interference, threats to our critical infrastructure. We need to be very, very vigilant, however, when it comes to this European democracy shield, because if we don't have a definition of interference, other vague definitions could be used in order to actually silence legitimate criticism of the EU Commission when it comes to farming, for instance. So, we need to be careful. We're talking about checks, controls on social networks. They're not necessarily the right way forward. So, Commissioner, I ask you, do you intend to do anything about freedom of expression on social networks in order to strengthen our democracy? Is that the objective? I think democracy is really under threat. Look at green lobbies, green NGOs, the threat that they actually represent. So I think we need more transparency rather than more control. We need more accountability. And we also need a clear result. Listen to our farmers, listen to our hunters, listen to our fishermen and fisherwomen. We need to listen to them rather than stigmatize them. We shouldn't be stigmatizing certain customs, certain ways of life. Instead, what we should be doing is really looking at a review of the directive. If the Commission doesn't do this, then I'm afraid there will be other rival powers, big powers, that will no longer need disinformation campaigns going forward. So, thank you very much.
Ďakujem a teraz poprosím kolegu Ruttolo.
Mr. Ruttolo.
Grazie, Presidente.
Thank you, President. Commissioner. The one who controls the algorithm controls the public debate, and the one who controls the public debate can influence votes. So it's good to fine X. It got a virulent reaction from across the Atlantic, and Elon Musk is virtually calling the EU a Fourth Reich. The crucial thing is to look at algorithm manipulation. Meta, too. Algorithms reduce the visibility of political content. The same is true of other platforms too. So you've got a private sector actor deciding what we can see, what should be given prominence, what we don't see. The Centre for Media Resilience can't keep track 24 hours a day. Every minute counts during an election, and so we're playing catch-up. We're years behind. The democratic damage is already done. We are seeing the outcome of elections already, so it's too late to rectify.
Over. Will you accept the blue card from Mr. Bistron? No, sorry. And teraz prosím kolegu Eriksona.
Well, previous centuries you saw censorship and fines against newspapers if they actually spoke out against the power of the state. But today it's digital media that are subject to the same kind of repression by the power, by the state. Now, of course, are we talking about freedom of opinion? No. I think there is a pretense to defend democracy and use that pretext to silence difference of opinion. We need to have counter-arguments. We need to have debates. We need to have counter-arguments and debates. That is the way forward. It's not a question of silencing those who don't feel the same way as you do. Therefore, Commissioner, let us not continue down this track. It's repression. It's basically making the European people very passive. That is not the way to go.
Will you accept the blue card from Madame Grappini? Yes.
I will speak Romanian. Dear colleague, you mentioned the right to free speech. Can you give us a definition of the right to free speech and of manipulation? Because I heard here colleagues of yours who seem to be confused. We do have the right to expression, but the right to say the truth, not to manipulate or spread lies. If somebody would write on media that you are a thief and your child who is in school would read this, what would happen then? Thank you.
Freedom of expression means that you advance an argument against your opponent. I know that throughout history there have always been lies, there's always been distortion, there's all sorts of crap in debate. It has been the case throughout history. But if you have democracy, if you have freedom of expression, then what you're fighting for is an open debate. By taking on the debate, bringing it on, bringing forward arguments to counter the arguments of your opponent. And then people can make up their own minds and decide what is truth, what is right. But don't try and silence those who disagree with you, because that is the wrong way to go. Thank you.
Ďakujem a teraz poprosím kolegu Zvera. Nech sa páči.
Mr. Zver.
Thank you very much for the floor. In my career here in the European Parliament, I have already been a member of special committees, for instance, for the fight against terrorism. 2 terms ago, this was a well-managed committee, and outstanding experts came to Parliament, and we finished our work with an excellent report. Right now, we have a similar special committee on the Democracy Shield. The leading of the committee was not that good. Participation was catastrophic. There were too many presentations by various NGOs and too few presentations by true experts, and that is why the report that we'll be dealing with is in this vein. Allow me to share this thesis. In the EU, there is more and more of this dangerous thought that digital challenges should be answered by more control, more sanctions, and more bureaucratic pressure. I believe this is the wrong path. We Europeans do not need some sort of authority that is going to decide what is permitted and what is not permitted to be said. Also, the question arises regarding so-called independent censors, which we have in individual countries, and that are very ideologically biased, especially in my country, in Slovenia, and this leads to the selective silencing of legitimate political opinions and a delegitimization of democratic discussion. We have experienced that totalitarian systems did not work out because they silenced free speech. Let us not repeat these historical mistakes which many of us lived through. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker, Ms. Guzanina.
Mistä ne hyödylliset?
President. Where do useful idiots come from? Look at social media, all kinds of fake images, lies, totally false videos. These are not published with the aim of providing information. The idea is to make people fooled. It's to make fools of people. The whole idea is to undermine social cohesion, to undermine our democracy, and we can see through them. Russia and other authoritarian regimes are using disinformation as a method of hybrid attack and distortion. They are interfering in our elections. They are corroding, eating away at our institutions. And there are many people who are happy to play the role of useful idiot. And there are useful idiots in this room too. That's why we need the European Democracy Shield and unity.
Kelly.
Thank you. The next speaker is...
Thank you, Mr. Kelly.
Before you start, I'm just letting you, but now I'm closing the catch the eye. Please, the floor is yours.
Commissioner McGrath.
Thank you, Commissioner McGrath. Friends.
This debate too many times. Efforts to combat misinformation and harmful online content are pitted against fundamental rights, free speech and national sovereignty, and we make little progress as a result. It's a tired story, where the real loser is the legitimacy of our institutions, the very thing that makes Putin and his cronies happy. If we want the Democracy Shield to be effective, we must start at the beginning. We need clear, shared definitions of the hybrid threats we face. Those threats must be properly identified and classified so that any future regulation can be enforced with legal certainty, rather than undermined by endless disputes and internal conflict. For this to work, it needs to be done in a transparent way. I call on the Commission to present a proposal, much as they did for the green taxonomy, which clearly defines these hybrid threats. These terms should then be debated and decided on in this Parliament with buy-in and input from all parties. It is only then, with clear agreed upon legal definitions, that we can hope to bring in enforcement mechanisms to give the Democracy Shield the teeth it needs. Without this clarity, we are doomed to more of the same tired, self-destructive debate. Thank
you, President, and a very happy Christmas to you all.
Our next speaker is Mr. Benifei.
La democrazia non cade in un giorno.
Democracy doesn't disappear in a day. It's defeated one post at a time. So what we need to do is focus on the digital space. I mean, the Commission is quite rightly looking at foreign interference, and they're real threats. But in public spaces, our debates are being distorted at the roots because algorithms are deciding what people can see and what people say. And that really strikes at the heart of democracy. Elon Musk is amplifying his posts using algorithms, and that's far-right content. And this is someone who's interfering in our democracies and causing major problems. Now, algorithms are generating profits as well. Artificial intelligence is amplifying everything, all these falsified realities, all this fake news. And it's not only foreign interference that's the problem, it's this platform model that poisons public debate. We have the rules to deal with this, and we need to implement them appropriately. Otherwise, people will cause us major problems.
Prosím kolegyňu Grossman, bitte sehr.
Well, it was only in the last plenary week recently that we were talking about the influence of third states, democracy, the rule of law and fundamental rights, more and more falling under pressure. Hate, disinformation and targeted manipulation are being deployed systematically in order to influence elections and to undermine the cohesion of our societies. And it's against that very background that the European Democracy Shield is meant to defend us. The objective is correct, and we need it, but what I would have liked to have seen from the Commission is more ambition, because for a while now we've been viewing elections in Europe as well, where there is a choice for or where very large online platforms are influencing these elections, where this form of spying and messing around is making ground, and where being above board is not working. So we need to have an area for democratic discussions and fair elections. If it is algorithms that's deciding what things get done, it's not a question of democracy. It is something that is actually undermining democracy.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Ross Sempere.
Gracias, President.
Thank you. Commissioner, democracy is never complete without information, manipulation and electoral interference. We've already seen this with our own eyes here in Europe. There is a destabilization agenda targeting the EU, campaigns coordinated by foreign powers designed to undermine and generate heat. We cannot commit the same mistakes. Again, we cannot allow the online platforms to dominate. We cannot hand them Europe on a plate. We have to tackle the far right. Otherwise, we can achieve nothing. Therefore, Commissioner, we would ask you to apply the Digital Services Act in its entirety, because the slightest loophole when fighting disinformation, it will be fatal. And then the report on the media services, we hope for preventive and inclusive upstream education, because the best tool to build up democracy is support for our citizens. Thank you.
Gracias. A teraz poprosím kolegu Lópeza Aguilara, por favor.
Thank you, President. Escudo de la democracia es el...
The Democracy Shield is the name of a special committee of this Parliament, of which I have the honour of being a member. And the idea is to defend the European idea of democracy against its enemy, non-state actors as well as foreign states. Also these very large online platforms and their model, which uses addictive algorithms and polarizes societies, dividing them into different segments that are more and more irreconcilable between themselves. But we're not indefensible vis-à-vis this. We have the act that the DSA, the Digital Services Act, which has tools available. So, for example, the European Commission can fine businesses just as they can do against member states. I mean, they fined Meta, for example, many million euros. But the fact is that European democracy has ways of defending itself. Here we're talking about freedom of expression. We're talking about algorithms that polarize and spread hate. And this is undermining democratic discourse. Thank you.
Coming to the votes soon. A teraz poprosím kolegyňu Galve.
Now, colleague Galvez.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. Freedom is compatible with democracy. The threat of foreign interference and disinformation are real, and they're endangering European democracy and indeed the European project. They are inflicting ever-increasing damage on electoral processes and democratic institutions, and this runs counter to the rule of law and human rights. We need a necessary regulatory framework to tackle this and ensure it is correctly implemented, including safe and strategic infrastructure, cybersecurity, and the protection of all of our institutions. We need a European intelligence service to do this. We cannot allow algorithms and the VLOPs to act in a way that interferes with geopolitics and ensures that they are becoming a weapon of manipulation in Europe. The EU needs to implement the existing regulatory framework urgently so that we can ensure we have transparency of these platforms and there is not amplification of disinformation. European silence when faced with this threat.
Be strict, I'm sorry. Thank you. And now we come to Catch the Eye, and I have 5 requests for the Catch the Eye. I have 5 minutes, which is beautifully fitting, balance among the groups. So first, I would like to give the floor to Madame Adamovich. Proszę Pani Przewodnicząca.
Szanowny Panie Przewodniczący. Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, let's answer the question, why does Elon Musk want to destroy the EU? Because the united EU is the only one to say no to him, because only the EU tries to save its citizens from digital slavery. Platforms multiply its algorithm in order to earn money, and they earn money on hatred, on conspiracy theories, on pathologies and sick ideologies. They have no problem promoting Russian propaganda because it clicks very well, and every click means more money on the accounts of oligarchs like Musk. For them, human lives, decency, democracy don't matter. What matters is profit, and profit comes from what is hideous and horrible. Europe has to be courageous. An internet oligarch cannot be beyond law. Hatred cannot be his business model at the cost of citizens. Thank you.
Teraz poprosím paní
Thank you. Now we have colleague Grappini. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, President, Commissioner, ladies and gentlemen. Here we're talking about the defence of democracy. There's nothing more important than defending democracy. But how can we achieve that? The fact that here in Parliament there are colleagues who've been elected by citizens who are happy to allow disinformation, hate, violence. We're seeing this through fake content and all sorts. There are rules that are in place, both online and offline. We have to make sure this is binding everywhere. There's no point having free food if there are toxic ingredients in that food. So information is important. In Romania, we're seeing lots of legislation hasn't been implemented yet. We're seeing what's going on with TikTok. If this goes on too great a length, it's a problem. Of course, there's a problem with content. Of course, we need to take decisions. Of course, we need to explain to citizens how things work. The freedom of opinion doesn't mean lying, providing misinformation or manipulating. That's destroying democracy. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have colleague Grajulis. The floor is yours.
Dear members of the European Parliament, in my country, the Conservatives and Liberals changed the broadcasting law, which had existed for many years, and the Director General is being publicly appointed, and now 2/3 of the National Broadcasters Council votes are required to change the Director General, and they call it democracy. Afterwards, an audit was conducted, and it was identified that our national broadcaster is not using 80 million euros in a transparent way. There is nepotism and other problems, and then they decided to amend the law to make sure that the Director General is appointed by secret vote. And those so-called Conservatives and Liberals, the so-called defenders of democracy, started saying that this is fight against democracy. That's the freedom of speech you have in my country.
Thank you. Now we have colleague Sorer. The floor is yours.
Monsieur le Commissaire McGrath, chers collègues.
Commissioner McGrath, colleagues, there is a solution that could change everything, and that is the solution of my friend and former French Education Minister, Luc Ferry. His idea was to end anonymity on digital platforms and on social networks. That would considerably reduce the hatred that is currently destroying our societies. That would also considerably reduce disinformation, and it would enable us to deal with bots, and trolls. So I think this would be an excellent idea, Commissioner, and you should really go for it. That would really help our democracy shield to be robust. And let me give you an example of what's happened to me so that you can understand how we're manipulated. I signed up to Republicans Against Trump, an internet network, and immediately my internet, my computer was made invisible, and I could no longer get visibility on the internet. Thank you.
A teraz poprosím kolegu Andriukaitisa.
Colleague Andriukaitis is next. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Commissioner, we are talking today about those issues which are very broad. It's democracy, education, legal education, civic education in our schools, so that everyone understands what democracy means. We also need to think about how history is taught. We need to put greater emphasis on fascist, Nazist, totalitarian regimes to explain how they get strengthened so that we could protect ourselves from them. Third, we need to strengthen the non-governmental sector. Even those, especially those who defend human rights and democracy. And we need to involve our citizens as much as possible into those processes. Engagement, ownership, that's what we need, because a well-informed citizen is the most resilient to the disinformation. Thank you.
Very much. And now to conclude the debate, I would like to give the floor to Commissioner McGrath.
Yes, thank you very much, President, and can I once again thank MEP Gies for giving us this opportunity this morning. It's been a very healthy debate and we have heard a diversity of views, and isn't that the essence of democracy? And in many respects it captures what we are trying to protect within the European Union. And I want to provide the reassurance that we will continue to push forward at full capacity with our work on open cases under the DSA, for instance on systemic risks to civic discourse, to encourage more positive change in the digital economy while following due process. And since the start of its application, the DSA has already shaped the online space for the better, acknowledging the challenges posed by a proliferation of new online manipulation techniques. One key priority of the European Democracy Shield that we brought forward a few weeks ago is to reinforce situational awareness and to support response capacity to safeguard the integrity of the information space. It puts forward several measures to better counter foreign information manipulation and interference and disinformation campaigns through what needs to be a whole of society and also a whole of government approach, and to do so in a manner in full respect of fundamental rights and indeed the allocation of competences under the treaty, and making best use of the many tools available both at national and at EU level. And our efforts are now focusing on rolling out these actions, and I know that I can count on your close engagement and support as we seek to do so. I think what we have heard also this morning is a misrepresentation of the efforts of the European Union to defend democracy, our efforts to tackle disinformation, to tackle interference in our democratic processes, and to some way represent that as being an attempt at censorship, which is completely false. That is absolutely not the case, and the DSA has been the subject of much criticism by certain members of the House again this morning, and I think it's important to clarify a few points. The main goal of the DSA is to create a digital space that respects the fundamental rights of our citizens and our consumers, and far from being a tool of censorship, it actually by design protects freedom of expression within the European Union, and that is fundamentally what our democracy is about: vibrant and robust debate. And to give a tangible example, if your content is removed by a platform, the platform must explain the reason why your content has been removed and actually provide you with a right of appeal. So the freedom of expression safeguards are actually inbuilt by design within the DSA, and I think we need to reinforce and explain what the DSA is and indeed what it is not. And given the extraordinary power of algorithms, I think it is rational that there must be safeguards. We have to have guardrails in place, because what we do not tolerate offline, because it is illegal, we do not tolerate online either. And if you look at the different provisions within the DSA, which has been criticised by certain members of the House this morning, it deals with the protection of minors, issues around age verification, protecting minors from exposure to pornography, for example. It deals with unsafe and non-compliant products, toys and electrical appliances that can cause real harm and even death to EU citizens. It seeks to address risks around gender-based violence. It seeks to address the spread of disinformation, the deliberate dissemination of fake content. And I want to assure the House this morning that EVP Verkunnen, DG Connect, all of the national digital services coordinators are fully committed to the implementation and the enforcement of the Digital Services Act. And what we now need to do more broadly is to move ahead at full speed with the implementation of the actions that we have set out in our democracy package, the European Democracy Shield, and also the EU strategy for civil society. I will lead the work in setting up the new Centre for Democratic Resilience within the European Union, and we will do so as quickly as we possibly can. And to those who question whether interference in elections actually exists, I would say look at the evidence. Look at the evidence before our eyes, even in very recent elections, the parliamentary elections that have been held in Moldova. And we all need to work together to protect the fundamental pillars that underpin European democracy. We need to support a free and independent media, and that's why in all of my engagements with the Member States I underline the importance of the implementation of the European Media Freedom Act. Thanks to your support and the Member States, that has become law. We now need to see it fully implemented because local media, independent broadcasters, public service media all play a crucial role in copper fastening democracy within the European Union, and the rollout of the civil society strategy, making sure that those grassroots organisations can have their voice heard and not have the space that they operate within narrowed further within the European Union, and of course an independent judiciary, just to name some of the examples of those foundations of European democracy that we must continue to protect, because it is the people's democracy. They are the first and the most important line of defence in protecting and supporting the democracy of the European Union. And the final message is that the EU will decide the laws for the European Union, and that the EU will enforce our laws, and we will do so based on the evidence, irrespective of where the other party comes from or is based. We will do so in an even-handed, a fair but a firm and consistent manner. And thank you for the debate. Thank you for your continued support and engagement. And I know that I can look forward to strong support from this House as we now move forward to implement all of the actions set out in the European Democracy Package. Thank you all.
Thank you, Commissioner. This concludes the debate. And also let me thank you, colleagues, for really hours and hours of interesting debates during this year, and looking forward towards the next year. I wish you Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Rokovanie sa prerušuje a bude o chvíľu.
Now the sitting is suspended and we will continue very soon with the votes. Thank you.